Poland's story during the Second World War is one of complete misery. There's really no way to dress this up. It's just horror, sadness, misery, and yeah. I mean, genuinely, it's just one of the worst in every sense of the word for wherever you were in the world for the Second World War. It's just bad. On one hand, the Poles had to contend with the utter psychos in the SS and their massacres, and on the other hand, they had to deal with the other mustache psycho who also wanted to kill them all. Across this turbulent landscape showered in misery and sadness, surrounded by conflict, there are some pretty amazing stories though. Polish heroes who will stand the test of time regardless of those who stand against them. Names like Witold Pilecki, who I will eventually do a video on sometime in the future, the man who volunteered to go into Auschwitz. But for today's story, well, I think we could use something a bit more lighthearted, and nothing quite rivals that like the tale of Wojtek, the bear who became a soldier and ate a lot of cigarettes. Like, a lot of cigarettes. Wojtek's story begins in the rugged mountains of Iran in the spring of 1942 following the invasion of Poland by the USSR and Nazi Germany. Yeah, they invaded together, they were allies, we're not going to be revisionists here, we remember the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. A group of Polish soldiers, part of the 22nd Artillery Supply Company, was making its way through the Middle East, and after failing spectacularly at being prisoners in the Soviet Union, just Polish things, at a railway station near Hamadan, the soldiers came across a young Iranian boy carrying a small brown bear cub. The cub, they were told, was an orphan, and this happened after his mother had been killed by hunters. An 18-year-old refugee with the soldiers, Irina Bakowicz, it's probably wrong, I'll just flash the name on screen, was taken in by the bear though, and she went to a nearby officer to make her case for his adoption. After making a quick trade of a few tins of food, some chocolate and a Swiss Army knife, a very happy lieutenant adopted the little guy, and for the next 3 months he lived as a pet and mascot in the Polish refugee camp near Tehran, under the care of Irina. In August that year though, the bear, now starting to grow, was donated to the 2nd Transport Company, which was later transformed and reformed into the 22nd Artillery Supply Company, and the bear was christened Wojtek, a diminutive form of the Polish name this, meaning joyful warrior or he who enjoys war. The soldiers and their new companions set off on the long journey through Persia to make their way back to the fight. Now, it must be said that Wojtek was so much more than a mascot. He quickly became a cherished member of the group, and by all accounts, he liked the men who adopted him as much as they loved him. He quickly adapted to his new martial life, mimicking the habits of his Cuban companions. The men would raise their new friend on a diet of readily available hand staples, including things like condensed milk, fed through an old vodka bottle, fruit, syrup, and as he grew older, beer and cigarettes. Now for those wondering, Wojtek did not smoke the cigarettes, he is a bear after all, bears don't have thumbs, so making the lighter work, well, it's not really a feasible thing to do. So he just ate them. Like Tic Tacs, he just eat cigarettes. The bear would be treated as part of the unit though, completely. At night, he would sleep with the men to keep them warm. During the daytime, he began to mimic their actions, saluting when he was greeted, marching on 2 legs like the men would, and wrestling with them for exercise, really just becoming a beloved companion for everyone he came across. After journeying through Iraq, Syria, Palestine, and then to Egypt, where the Polish 2nd Corps under the command of General Anders was deployed to join the British 8th Army, the unit fought together alongside Commonwealth and Free French forces in famous battles such as that of El Alamein. But after the Axis defeat in Africa, the Poles and their bear came into a bit of a problem, because now there was no more enemy to fight without having to get on a British transport ship, and British transport ships forbid the transportation of animal mascots and pets. Unless you were the SAS and you just didn't listen to orders. That left 2 options. Either somebody had to free the bear and let him live in North Africa, which, let's be honest, he probably wouldn't survive. Or, well, the men would have to do what the Australian cavalry had to do in the First World War, when transportation home was refused for their horses, and end the misery before it started. The Poles, being the Poles, said nah, screw this, and they took the 3rd option, enlisting Wojtek into the Polish army as a private, with 2 men assigned as his caretaker. Now Private Wojtek would have his own paybook, serial number, uniform, and rank, and he would continue to live with the men in their tents, being transported around in his own truck. Together as a unit, the men of the 22nd made their way across the Mediterranean and into Italy, to begin the push into what Churchill would once call the soft underbelly of Europe. The Allied advance into Italy was incredibly successful in its early days, sweeping across Sicily and then into the toe of the Italian peninsula. It was all going so well until the Italian government fell. Now, initially this was seen as a bit of a boon to the Allied cause, knocking out one of the major powers of the Axis out of the war completely, but with the Italian fall came the end of Mussolini's de facto power, and the beginning of Germanic rule over Italy. German rule came with German tanks and men, who would prove to be a real thorn in the side of the Allies, as they dug in along the winter line to defend the Italian capital. As the beginning of 1944 rolled around, this line had to be broken. The Allied advance had to continue, but standing in the way of the Allies was the German forces holding a series of peaks and ridges known to history as the Gustav Line. One of these peaks was Monte Cassino, a hilltop abbey dating back to 529 AD. In an odd move by the Germans, who were at the time known for absolutely pillaging Europe for its arts and riches, they had left the historic abbey empty, instead taking positions on the slopes below the structure. Sadly, the accurate German artillery fire convinced the Allied commanders that the abbey was being used as an observation post, and on the 15th of February, 1,400 tons of high explosive was dropped on the structure, and this only made the situation worse. As the rubble settled, German paratroopers, Fallschirmjägers, moved in to occupy the ruins, turning the mountaintop into a killing field. On the 18th of May, months into what seemed like an unending battle, the Polish Second Corps was called in for what would be the fourth and final assault on the mountaintop, and it was here that Wojtek would become a legend. As his unit fought on, the support company he was assigned to were moving artillery crates from supply points and trucks to the guns. These were large 100-pound or 45-kilogram crates full of 25-pounder ammunition. Wojtek again began to mimic the soldiers around him. Not being content to sit still, he started to pick up these crates and carry them forward. At least one British officer witnessed this. Likely struck from both shock and amusement at the sight of this gigantic bear and a bunch of Polish soldiers working together to get the guns firing, Wojtek would apparently not drop a single crate during his exploit, and soon after the 22nd would actually adopt his likeness as their official unit emblem. As a thank you for his efforts, the not-so-little bear anymore would be promoted to the rank of corporal. The Poles would fight on, with their friend and comrade until the very end of the war, but sadly Wojtek, the soldier of Poland, would never get to step foot in his adopted country with his now family. As was the case with many Polish heroes after the war, the word liberation can be used not just with a grain of salt, but quite literally I need you to drain the entire ocean about 7 times over, get all the salt from it, and then you've maybe got 25% of the amount of salt that I'm putting with this phrase, liberation. The new order had thrown out the crimson red banners with black swastikas, and brought in the new crimson red with the hammer and sickle. Those who were deemed problematic, too Western, or simply too different were quickly thrown into prison, sometimes executed on trumped-up charges of treason. This particularly impacted Poles who had taken up arms as part of the Western powers, and the 22nd was no exception. For many Poles, they were given the opportunity to settle in nations of their choosing within the British Commonwealth. Many would actually choose Australia, forming a vital pillar of modern Australian society, and vastly improving our cuisine while they were at it. But for many, they simply stayed in the United Kingdom. The 22nd itself would be posted to Scotland during demobilisation, and after the unit was officially demobilised on the 15th of November 1947, Wojtek was given a permanent home at the Edinburgh Zoo. He would live a very comfortable life in retirement here, being a star on the BBC in children's programming, and being visited by his family members from the 22nd and other Polish units. Wojtek would actually respond really happily when people spoke to him in Polish, recognising the language and the accent, and he would be very happy to see his family, who he would without fail recognise and go up to even years after the war ended. Often his former comrades would actually throw a few cigarettes to him, much to the annoyance of the zookeepers, but Wojtek would happily munch away. Wojtek would die there on the 2nd of December 1963, aged 21 years old. The old fellow was nearly half a ton at the time of his death, and he stood proudly at 1.8 metres tall. The legend of Wojtek has been immortalised in numerous ways. Statues and plaques dedicated to him can be found in locations as varied as Krakow, London, and Edinburgh. The Edinburgh Memorial, unveiled in 2015 in Princess Street Gardens, features Wojtek alongside a Polish soldier, forever commemorating their partnership. There has also been a street named after him in Poznan. At the site of his most famous exploits in Italy, a marble statue was actually unveiled in 2019. Wojtek's story has inspired countless books, documentaries, and artistic works. Children's books, documentaries, and films all recount his adventures, bringing his story into the modern world. More recently, in 2024, a short film was published called A Bear Named Wojtek, which was actually nominated for an Academy Award, and I have since gone and watched since I wrote this little script. It's a really well put together film. He is also a secret leader that can be put in charge of Poland if you make some choice decisions in the video game Hearts of Iron 4. Now you do that by turning on alternate history mode, and you go through one of the monarchy approaches. You can name Wojtek the King of Poland. Wojtek, though, is so much more than just a fun little story about a mascot. See, for the Polish diaspora, this bear became more than a story from the past. He symbolizes resistance, resilience, hope, and the enduring spirit of a people driven from their homeland, who fight on for a chance to go home. In short, he became a really effective propaganda tool for the people who were stuck abroad. I first learnt about Wojtek actually myself from a very elderly Polish man who was the son and quite young at the time of the Second World War, and he'd made a vow to his parents to never go back to Poland until it was free. He finally did get to go back, but he did tell me a great story about a bear before he returned finally to Poland, where he has since long passed away. Now, to be a bit of a Debbie Downer, it is very true that over time, Wojtek's exploits have been embellished, and this is not really uncommon when it comes to legends. Not just talking about animals either. If you ask the average person what Sergeant York did, they won't be able to tell you what he did. Instead, they'll say he destroyed an entire German army, or something like that. They won't be able to tell you his exact exploits, and that's not uncommon. The same thing happened with John Basilone during the Second World War, an American Medal of Honor recipient. He did amazing things during the battles in Guadalcanal, but by the time he got back to the States for his war bond tour, people were acting as if he destroyed the entire Japanese army in Guadalcanal by himself. Embellishment, it just happens. Some details though, such as the exact extent and nature of his role at Monte Cassino, are hotly debated by historians. Military records, photos, and eyewitness accounts though do confirm a lot of his story. We just aren't sure how much of the story is true beyond a shadow of a doubt. What is completely true though is that this bear absolutely did exist. He was officially enlisted and he did travel with the soldiers, and he was witnessed by British officers carrying artillery shells at the Battle of Monte Cassino. Whether or not every tale is strictly factual, the essence of Wojtek's story is rooted in truth. Kinda like the story of Unsinkable Sam. There is a lot of truth in these tales about animals, but the odds are that some of the details are played up for the camera, so to speak. What is 100% true about the story of Wojtek is how it highlights the psychological need of soldiers in extreme circumstances, how companionship, particularly animal companionship, has long been recognised as a source of comfort, and Wojtek's presence provided that to the men of the 22nd in spades. It can't be denied that they clearly gave something to that little bear too. Given the affection he showed them even years later when he was fully grown and living in Edinburgh Zoo, it is completely obvious that that bear absolutely loved them as if they were his born family. And that is the story of Wojtek. And I'm aware acutely that I've made a lot of videos lately about animals and shenanigans surrounding them, and no, I will not apologise, and yes, I will probably keep making them. Because at the end of the day, there's something pretty cool about animals, and how their relationship with humans stands the test of time, language, culture, and civilization. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will catch you all next time.